Hi everyone, I'm Emma Carmo and you're watching Breathe TV, a safe space to navigate your breast cancer journey. You may have just seen part 1 of Michelle Benjamin's story. She's such an amazing, resilient warrior. I hope you were inspired by her first episode as I was, so please stay tuned for part 2. So before we start the show, I always want to get people in a space of alignment with where we are because we do want you to breathe. So if you're driving a car, don't do what I'm going to do right now. Don't do it like this. Just sit there. If you're home, you can place your hand on your heart and on your belly. And take a deep breath. And one more. And just repeat after me. I'm going to say 5 short affirmations. I am comforted.
I am comforted.
I am surrounded by compassion.
I'm surrounded by compassion.
I am filled with peace.
I am filled with peace.
I'm surrounded by light and love.
I'm surrounded by light and love.
I am divinely guided.
I'm divinely guided.
I am home.
I am home.
And so it is. You mentioned talking to God and how important that was to you and how often you talk to God on a regular basis. But I know you became recently a death doula.
Yes.
And so like you're a fearless warrior, you're an advocate, and you became a death doula. It's something which fascinates me because we discuss a lot about living in this world and fighting to live. We are prepared to live our lives. We were not prepared to die. And so what made you go into being a death doula? Was it after your diagnosis?
So, yes. I didn't know it was actually a career or an actual title to it. But when I started doing research on it, I started to realize that I've been doing this my entire life. When I was 9 years old, my brother passed away at the age of 23 from kidney failure. My brother was my best friend. I'm the youngest of 5 children. Even in his death, I was the person in the family that took control of everyone, meaning I held everyone together as a 9-year-old child, right? And my brother, at the time in the 80s, back in the 80s and 90s, he used to have to get blood transfusions. And unfortunately, he became HIV positive. And back then, there was, no one knew what it was. It was like, oh my God. And I remember as a child going to see him in the hospital and everyone in hazardous suits, and you had to put on a hazardous suit to even go in the room. And, that's my brother. I'm not putting on a hazardous suit. If I tried to kiss him, nurses would say, don't do that. And I would be looking at them like, that's my brother, I'm gonna kiss, And my brother was a love of life. My brother was very outgoing. He liked to travel. He was like the head camp counselor at the Fresh Air Fund my entire life. He was the kid that, what you would call the backpack guy, the guy that pack a bag and would travel the world, live life. And I remember there were times he would sneak out the hospital and to go to the movies, and just because he was just tired of being there. And my mom, even to this day, always says how when he passed, Michelle just kind of was like, I was at the funeral holding up adults from breaking down, and that's my brother there,
And you were 9.
And I was 9. And then a couple of years as I got older, my 2 children, I think Osset was a baby, my grandmother got sick, and my grandmother was the matriarch of my family. She was in the hospital. She had a bad reaction to her blood pressure medicine, and I remember her tongue being swollen and out of her mouth. And my grandmother was a lover. When I mean, this woman was like the epitome of Black queen. She raised her kids, and that was her blessing. She would tell you all the time, your kids are your blessing. And as long as you do what you're supposed to do for you and your kids, God will always protect you. And she welcomed anyone in her home. Everyone loved her. She had 10 kids. My mom is the oldest. And my grandmother worked in the hospital system for years. And I remember going to see her, and she just wasn't being taken care of effectively. And I was on it. My mom stayed in the hospital Monday through Friday, overnight. Even if they told her she couldn't stay, she was like, I'm staying in the waiting room. I wish y'all would try to kick me out. So she did the weeks, I did the weekends, and me and my 2 kids would be there. It was to the point where the director of patient advocacy knew my first name, because you're not gonna treat her like a patient, she's a person. And I would
Exactly.
say things like, you know, it's crazy that the same woman used to work in this hospital is not a patient and she's treated like she doesn't have worth. So I would go in there and I would clean her mouth out. I would bathe her. You know, I would bring her makeup and we would put I would let her put her makeup on and we would talk. And because at the end of the day, she's still the person that I knew, and I didn't want her to feel like her being in a hospital changed that. And unfortunately, after months, she went to rehab and she died. And then my dad got sick right after my chemotherapy ended. And my father didn't want me to know how sick he was getting. So oftentimes he would tell me, I'm gonna come see you, and then cancel at the last minute. I remember the one treatment that he came with me to the doctor for chemotherapy. The whole ride there, he was like, you know, doctors try to poison you with chemotherapy. You sure they doing the right thing? And I'm like, Daddy, I'm already in session 4 now. Like, we're not gonna be doing this.
But we passed that time.
We passed this already. And he was making complaint. And then as we got to the parking lot, he talked about his stomach was hurting him and he wasn't feeling well. And I'm like, you know, if you don't feel well, you can go home. And he's like, you sure? Now that's, you know, and I was like, yeah, I'll be fine by myself. And he was like, okay. And he left. And I knew, you know, why he needed to leave. My father lost his wife to lung cancer and lost his mom to leukemia. So the important women in his life have cancer. And men oftentimes won't speak about what they're feeling. But I was just like, my kids are in tune with me. I was in tune with my dad. So it wasn't that I was upset with him because he didn't really want to come. I knew that anger that he's displaying and just complaining was much deeper than that. And
it was probably grief.
Yeah, and I knew as his daughter why it was happening. Yeah. Because the 3 important women in his life, he's losing them and dealing with them with cancer. So I decided one day to pop up on him. And when I popped up on him, my dad's legs were swollen. And my dad is like the color of this rug, and his legs were black and blue. He had a defibrillator in his chest, and he avoided getting it maintenance. My dad was in the hospital for 3 months. The entire 3 months he was there, I was his caregiver. I was there every single day with him with one breast, working from the hospital, setting his room up to be comfortable for him. You know, they tried to do a minor procedure. He coded during the procedure 5 times, and he was in ICU for 3 weeks on a ventilator. My dad's room was filled with pictures. I had battery operated lights. I had a Bluetooth speaker. I would play the OJs, the Temptations, the Isley Brothers. Like, his room was the party room, the relaxed room. I mean, nurses would come in and just breathe because it was just the environment was set in a place for him to be relaxed. And he was on a ventilator. And I remember my dad becoming out of sedation and him tapping his fingers like this because he heard the music the entire time he was on the life support. God gave me my dad for 2 weeks of him not being on life support, him and I talking. In that time of him being in the hospital, I sat down with a funeral director and I prepared his funeral at his home. Even though he didn't die until a month and a half later, that was an opportunity for me to do things the way and be in a clear mind to do it the way he would want it done. And by doing that, I'm honoring him in the way he would want it done. Fast forward, when I was metastatic, right? It took a lot because every day you hear about people passing away from metastatic breast cancer. And I had to really think about, how do I want my life to be? What do I want my children to have to not deal with if I pass? Because it seems like this cancer is out of my control. 1 minute I'm in remission, I didn't even make a full year, and now I'm back and I went from stage 1 to stage 4. That hits different. Mm-hmm. I didn't go to 2, 3. It's like being at the bottom of the steps and then being at the roof on the ledge like this. You don't know how you got there. You didn't go through the process of each step, you know, spending time in those each step, stage 2, stage 3. You went from the bottom of the step to the roof on the ledge. I had the same funeral director that I used for my dad, which is a family friend, come to my house a week after I was diagnosed. and I planned my entire funeral down to my lip color, down to the music I want played, down to what I want said. It empowered me so much to be in control of that, because cancer takes away a lot from you. So to regain control in areas that you can is a powerful movement for me. And it inspired me to look deeper into what a death doula does. And the death doula's role is basically to help facilitate a person's passing and transitioning while they're in a state of mind to still have control of how they want things to be.
That gifting is almost like a very selfless thing.
Yes.
And you're a metastatic breast cancer patient who's gone through so much, and you're now a death doula helping other people, preparing for the very thing that you're preparing yourself for. I don't even know how to address that, the level of like selflessness and love and just generosity of heart. But how, for those who are watching, who are thinking, I have a loved one, or who is someone who's metastatic, who's thinking about the end of life, how they're going to feel, isn't part of their job to tell them what they're going to be experiencing, how to manage that kind of stuff, like the symptoms, the breathing,
part of the role of a death doula is that you're not a medical profession. You're doing more of support and caring, but it also comes with layers of support, assistance, being a part of the family, letting them know, what to expect, what could possibly be the outcome, and also preparing them for the aftermath, because that's part of the journey that gets neglected. Grief is a long-term situation. It's something that we as individuals take lightly, because people, everyone shows up when it happens. Everybody's present
at the end.
But at the end, when the family's really going, when you wake up in the morning, you try to call that person and you can't. Even for myself, like, I have a death plan.
What is that?
So my death plan is, if I get to a space where my cancer has progressed and there's nothing that can be done, when I get to that point where I'm gonna be, there's nothing more that they can do, I have who I want around me, and that's it. I have the type of music I want played, and that's it. I don't want people that's not part of this plan is not invited to this function or this event, right? And those people are my children. I want to spend those moments with my children. I want them to be in the bed with me. I want them to hug on me. I want them to be a part of that, because although, I am loved by many, those are the two that are really going to be hurting for the rest of their life. So I don't want it to be a big thing where, 1,000 members come from different all over the world and, everybody wants to come say their goodbyes. I don't need you to come say goodbye to me. I need you to allow me my space. Because what people don't realize is that the hardest thing is for the person that is actually going through it.
Yeah.
Because it's out of your control, it's happening, and you can't do nothing against it.
You're thinking about your children.
Yeah.
Because no one is going to love them the way you love them.
Yep. So for me, that is my death plan. And as long as I'm able to, I guess, keep up, if I die during surgery or something like that, right? That's out of my control. But if I have control of my death plan, I want to be home. I don't want to be in a hospice. I want to be home, and I want to be around my children. So that's another thing that a death doula helps. It helps the individual find their voice.
What would you tell someone to tell their child who's living with MBC and looking at potential, terminal cancer diagnosis?
One of the main things I would tell people is that don't be afraid to have that conversation with your children. But it doesn't often mean that you have to have that conversation right away. Sometimes you have to plan it out, and you have to make sure that you have the right foundation set up for the impact. Because the impact might not be you might not be able to control it. It might be too much for you to even have to try to fix. But you make sure you have that sound foundation that if they need to fall on something, there's something there. There's a trampoline, there's a parachute for them. So that might be having a supportive village step in, having their doctor involved, having their school involved, having counselors involved, having mentors involved. One of the great things that I love about my medical team is that my daughter, at her being sick, she's not really allowed to come to the hospital to go with me to treatments. But I had a conversation with them, and I said, my daughter got questions. and she wants to ask these questions. She don't want me asking them for her. Who do I need to speak to get it approved for her to come in and have a conversation? And they approved for her to come meet with my oncologist and my research team. She wasn't able to sit through chemotherapy, and I understood why. But she came in and she had on her Fearless Warrior hooded sweater. She had her research name tag with her name, and she had her notebook and her questions that she had to ask. And she came in ready. She did her meditation in the waiting room, and she went in that room and she asked questions. She asked questions like, do you guys give snacks to the patients in treatment? What happens if a patient's not following instructions? And what about, does my mom listen to what you tell her to do? Like a normal child. And then she also asks questions like, what would you say to a girl like me on better educating or better knowing my body? Because in reality, although I would never wish this on her, but my journey is her journey. She has to start getting mammograms at 25.
She does.
And she has to know, as a mom, I want her to be educated, ready, and know what to speak about, what to ask about, what to question.
So you've empowered her to be this amazing, fearless young woman that's she's already changing the whole world.
Yes.
Share a bit about your mindset and how you took your journey in that quote unquote death sentence and you've created all these amazing things. How can mindset shift your trajectory?
What I would encourage someone, that's going through that process, just think about what you want to do. Think about your dreams and your desires and actually stop using them as words in your head and actually putting them to work. Oftentimes we have things that we want to do in life and they just are words going through our head. Stop letting those words float around. Actually do the work.
Do the work.
And don't be afraid to trust. Don't be afraid to try. Everything might not be a success story. But if you tried it, then you can't say that you didn't attempt it.
How can somebody support a loved one through dying? And conversely, how can they embody compassion for themselves?
So what I encourage people is that you have to not make it about you at that moment. You have to make it about that person. And, try to have conversations with that person on what they want, what their needs are. And sometimes someone can just you be sitting in the room. One of the other things that I want to mention is that so some people do it like give the person the flowers while they're still alive, right? So you have people that will have their death ceremonies while they're present, right? And what I did is my dad's birthday is September 27th. He died October 9th. My dad was in the hospital. I did a 20-minute video of just family members, telling them how much they appreciate him, happy birthday, everything. My daughter did actually Janet Jackson Pleasure Principles video. She did not do that. Yeah, she did. See that? I have the video. But she had the whole leotard outfit with the jean jacket. She did the whole dance routine. And my son sung Luther Vandross because that was my dad's one of his favorite artists. And the day of his birthday, we had a celebration in the hospital room. I got a big screen monitor and I played the video. It was 20 minutes long of different family members just giving him love, pouring into him, showing him love, telling him that we're here, you're not by yourself, we love you. And unfortunately, my dad passed away 2 weeks later, right? But it was giving him his flowers while he can still smell them. Mm-hmm. And that's another thing that I feel that, unfortunately in communities of color, we don't like to talk, we like to gossip. So I always tell people, stop gossiping at the dinner table and let's talk about what's really going on. Having those conversations of the cancers that are genetic, having those conversations of what grandma really had or what auntie really had.
That's the gift of life, though. Sharing the family history is a gift of life.
Knowing that these are possible things that are high risk for generations to come. Let's start really having those talks. Let's really start embodying those things. Like my family is high risk in prostate cancer. So my son already sees a urologist because of that. And educating himself about his body, because it's not just mom and breast cancer. My son, there's things that happen to our men as well. So educating them on these things to look out for, knowing their body, teaching them how to, be in tune with their body. It's theirs, and that part of it is part of creating that legacy as well. Because if you instill these tools in them now, they then will follow through and instill it in their generation. and hopefully it continues on. Nothing is guaranteed, but as long as you feel like you planted the right seeds, you just have to sit back and watch how they grow.
Guys, there you have it. Michelle is like, just, I have no words. You know, you're a gift to others in life, and you'll be a gift in others when you're not here, and you taught me so much today.
Thank you.
Everyone that you touch, whether it's physically or virtually, will be moved by your stories, your energy, your light, your love. Thank you for being you.
Thank you again, and it was a honor and a privilege.
Yeah. Everyone, thank you. I'm May McCarmel, and you're watching Breathe TV. I know you were as mind blown by Michelle's story as I was. I know that you're watching this inspired. You're watching this probably emotional. But what I hope you get from Michelle's story is the importance of knowing your purpose, walking in your path, and trusting in your own gut instincts and walking your own journey. And Michelle, thank you for telling us your story. You are touching so many lives. Thanks for watching. Until next time, be your best advocate, be empowered, and live your best life. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.